They say every nation has blood in its soil, that conquest is universal, that empire is a story all countries share, but no other modern nation still buries its dead in silence while praising the killers. No other democracy calls itself free while allowing one of the world's worst ongoing human rights crises to exist within its own borders. You want to draw moral equivalence? Show me another country where the original people still live under legal apartheid, where their women vanish by the thousands and no one blinks, where their languages are erased, their lands stolen, their graves unmarked, and the perpetrators celebrated on currency and carved into mountains. America was not simply built by blood. It is still being fed by it. The rivers still carry the weight of broken treaties. The forests still whisper the names of the disappeared, subsidiaries, and beneath every shopping mall and highway lies a stolen heartbeat unheard. This isn't ancient history. It's a present-day structure. It has zip codes, school boards, police forces. America doesn't just have a past. It has an unburied crime scene. And no, this is not just like every other country, because no other country lies to itself with such polished pride. No other nation wraps its genocide in fireworks, pledges, and patriotic denial. No other people so loudly declare liberty while knowing full well who was silenced to make room for that echo. America is not exceptional because it sinned. Every empire sins. America is exceptional because it never stopped and never admitted it, and the cost of that silence is still paid in native lives. America didn't just happen. It wasn't born by accident or divine blessing. It was forged through fire, theft, rape, and blood. This land was not empty. It was not waiting. It was home. When Europeans arrived, they brought their gods, their guns, their greed. They came not to share, but to own. And when ownership met resistance, they wrote a new gospel: civilize or kill. Entire nations were erased. The Pequot, the Powhatan, the Wampanoag, the Modoc, the Yuki. Each name once a people, now a footnote. Massacres were not crimes. They were policy. Slaughter wasn't an accident, it was the plan. The Trail of Tears wasn't a tragedy, it was a calculated death march. Thousands died not from misfortune, but from government design. Wounded Knee wasn't chaos, it was an execution. Ghost Dance wasn't superstition, it was hope shot down in snow. And let's stop pretending this was ever about peace. Every treaty signed was a promise already broken. Every promise made was a tool of war in disguise. America never negotiated in good faith. It negotiated with a gun under the table. The Founding Fathers weren't liberators. They were architects of a prison with blood-soaked blueprints. George Washington ordered the burning of Iroquois towns. Andrew Jackson made Indian removal into national law. Thomas Jefferson imagined the extermination of those who resisted. These are not footnotes. These are cornerstones. And if you think this was just history, just the cost of civilization, you are already complicit in forgetting. Because what happened then still shapes everything now. Land, law, borders, power. The bones of indigenous people lie under the very foundations of your schools, your banks, your shopping malls. You are standing on graveyards and pretending they are soil. Don't call it a tragedy. Call it what it was: theft, conquest, genocide. And if you cannot say those words, then maybe freedom isn't what you seek. Maybe what you seek is absolution without truth. You think the violence ended with treaties? With statehood? With monuments? It didn't. It evolved. It adapted. It put on a badge. It held a gavel. It wrote lesson plans. Today, Native women vanish by the thousands. Taken from highways, towns, reservations. Their names don't make the news. Their families scream into silence, and the system shrugs. It is called the MMIW crisis, missing and murdered Indigenous women. But crisis implies urgency. This is a pattern, a design, a quiet extermination. Police kill Native people at a higher rate than any other race in America. Not criminals, not terrorists, mothers, sons, elders, unarmed. And what happens next? The report is filed. The outrage fades. The badge is polished for tomorrow. The courts don't protect them. The prosecutors don't try. The press doesn't care. When violence is constant, it becomes invisible. When justice is optional, it becomes a weapon. But not all violence wears a uniform. Some sits behind desks. In classrooms, Native children are still taught that discovery began in 1492, that Indians were savages tamed by progress, that their own grandparents were obstacles, not ancestors. And if they speak their language, they are punished, not in chains anymore, but in shame. The boarding schools may be gone, but the curriculum still burns. The beatings may have stopped, but the forgetting continues. This is not ancient, it is now, and you are letting it happen. Every missing woman, every ignored murder, every forgotten word, every textbook lie is another blow struck by a nation that still refuses to see Native lives as fully human. They tell Native people to move on, to get over it, but what if the wound is still bleeding? What if the killing never stopped? What if the silence isn't peace, but complicity? This isn't history class. This is the autopsy report. And the cause of death, indifference. Not every crime needs a gun. Sometimes all it takes is silence. When a woman disappears and the news stays quiet, that silence kills. When a child speaks their language and the school tells them not to, that silence erases. When a body is found and no charges are filed, that silence protects the murderer. The textbooks lie, the movies caricature, the headlines skip, the history classes rush past in 2 paragraphs. The monuments stay up, the land acknowledgements mean nothing. And through it all, you are taught to forget. You were never meant to know this. That's the design. Because if you knew, you might care. And if you cared, you might act. And if you acted, the system would crack. So they raised you on a diet of myths. They taught you that Thanksgiving was gratitude, not grief. That Columbus discovered, not destroyed. They gave you feel-good stories and wouldn't ask hard questions. They trained your apathy. They weaponized your comfort. You think you're innocent because you didn't pull the trigger, but you benefit from the system that loaded the gun. You didn't write the textbook, but you believed it. You didn't steal the land, but you build your life upon it. And you walk past the graves like they are scenery. Your silence is not neutral. It has consequences. It grants permission. It sustains the system. Every time you look away, you participate. And don't say, I didn't know. You do now. Don't say that was before my time, because it isn't over. Don't say I can't do anything, because doing nothing is exactly what they want. The truth is this. It is not just the killers who bury the dead. It's the silent who shovel the dirt. But that silence, it wasn't just national. The world was watching, and still, it said nothing. They say silence is complicity. But what about global silence? What about the cameras that chose not to turn on? The headlines that never ran? The voices that speak loudly for distant tragedies and whisper or vanish for this one? The international press reports genocide in real time when it happens elsewhere. They cover mass graves, state violence, and cultural erasure, as long as the bodies aren't buried in American soil. Where was the BBC when Native women vanished by the thousands? Where was the UN when water protectors were met with tear gas? Where was CNN when Indigenous voices cried out at Standing Rock? You have the reach. You have the footage. You have the platforms. But you looked away. You always look away. You report on regimes that silence their minorities, but you say nothing about the founding democracy that did the same, and still does. You praise reconciliation in other nations, but never ask why America refuses to reckon with its own blood-soaked past. You warn the world against authoritarianism, but stay silent when the dead are domestic, and the oppressors wear stars and stripes. Your silence is not impartial. It is chosen. It is safe. It is shame. And every time you call this a complicated issue, you make it easy for violence to continue. Because there is nothing complicated about disappearance, about rape, about stolen land, about a government that breaks every treaty it signs. When you stay silent, you are not neutral. You are part of the mechanism that lets it all happen. The world watched, the world knew, and the world said nothing. America says it stands for freedom, for justice, for equality. But those words ring hollow when they echo through mass graves. You pledge allegiance to a flag, but what is that flag sewn from? Cotton picked by slaves, land stolen from the dead, dyes soaked in broken treaties. You say liberty and justice for all, but you mean for some. You sing about the rocket's red glare, but not the villages they burned. You kneel for the cross, but forget the missionaries who silenced native tongues. You speak of manifest destiny, but destiny for whom, and whose destruction made it possible. The Constitution was inked while genocide raged. The Declaration of Independence was written by men who owned humans and displaced nations. Your monuments are not history, they are celebrations of conquest, of men who ordered extermination and are now carved into stone faces on stolen mountains. You call yourselves the greatest democracy, but what is a democracy that was born from land theft, expanded through extermination, and sustained by forgetting? You lecture the world on human rights, but you can't even name the tribes whose bones built your cities. The American dream was never meant for everyone. It was bought at the price of native lives and paid in silence. This country was not made free. It was made by making others unfree. It was not founded on justice. It was founded on erasure. You don't get to wear freedom like a badge while ignoring the bodies beneath your boots. You don't get to preach peace while occupying stolen land. You don't get to wave your flag and pretend it doesn't cast a shadow. If liberty is real, it must belong to the people you tried to erase. If justice means anything, it must begin at the site of your crimes. And if America is to be redeemed, it cannot be through pride, only through truth. You cannot build a house of freedom on a foundation of bones and call it holy. Now you know. You know what was taken. You know who was erased. You know the violence didn't end. It just changed shape. So what happens next is not about history. It's about you. What you choose now is who you are. If you stay silent, you're not neutral. You're not uninvolved. You are a participant in a system that survives on your comfort. You don't need to burn villages to benefit from stolen land. You don't need to wear a badge to uphold a broken justice system. You don't need to raise a weapon to maintain a society that devalues native lives. All you have to do is nothing. And you can't say, I didn't know, not anymore. You can't say, it's not my fault, because you now know where you stand. You can't say, it's too complicated, because silence is simple and deadly. This is not about guilt. This is about responsibility. The difference is simple. Guilt is passive. Responsibility acts. If you walk away unchanged, you have chosen complicity. If you hear all of this and feel only discomfort, but take no action, you are part of the machine that made all of this possible. You are no longer an outsider to this story. You are in it now. You are accountable. You are seen. You are being asked, will you help end this silence or be another reason it continues? And if you think this was only your silence, think again. The silence was global. The world knew, and it still turned away. You may think this is a eulogy, that this is a story of a people who were once here. But we are not gone. We are not relics. We are not echoes. We are still here. We are the heartbeat beneath the pavement. We are the breath behind the language you tried to erase. We are the songs still sung at sunrise, the ceremonies held in defiance, the stories told in whispers, and now again in full voice. We are the land. And the land remembers. You tried to remove us. You failed. You tried to silence us. We grew louder. You tried to erase us. We wrote ourselves back into the world. So no, this is not a eulogy. It is a reckoning. a mirror held to your face, and a question you cannot avoid. Now that you know, what will you do with that knowledge? You cannot undo the past, but you can face it. You can stop pretending the crime is buried. You can stop pretending that justice was served. Reckoning is not about shame, it's about truth. Reconciliation is not about comfort, it's about change. There is no freedom without memory, no peace without justice, no healing without listening and then acting. We are not asking for pity. We are not asking for permission. We are asking, and always have been, for the truth to be seen and for the silence to end. We are still here, and we are watering what you do next.